Hello, this is Charlene with the Southern Gals Kitchen, and I want to welcome you to another show today. We're going to be making a really pretty traditional Mediterranean dish, and that is something in the Mediterranean diet. They do eat pasta, they just don't eat a lot of it. So we're going to make bison meatballs with spaghetti sauce and spaghetti today. It's going to be really good. I actually have already made my spaghetti sauce, and I'll tell you how I made it in just a minute. But we're going to make the meatballs right now. And I have beaten up 2 eggs, and I had breadcrumbs, so I used a ½ cup. If you use bread, you can use 3 to 4 pieces of bread, because the breadcrumbs are, you can put even 3/4 cups. So I used a ½ cup, save a few carbs here. And I've got a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan cheese I'm going to add. Getting my skillet hot because we're going to cook our meatballs. We're going to add in 2 tablespoons of dried parsley. You can use fresh if you have it. Just use a little bit less, a little bit more. I mean, your dried is more concentrated than the fresh. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of oregano. Oregano is very popular in Mediterranean cooking. And the reason I like Mediterranean cooking, one of the reasons, is it tends to be lower in carb. At least most of the recipes I try to stick to the lower carb. I love to cook with herbs. I raise them and I love them. I'm putting in just a couple pinches, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon of basil, dried. And you can put just a little bit of thyme in here. And I've got a teaspoon of salt. I've got a ½ cup of water. I'm going to mix these up. And then we're going to mix it with our bison. I've got a pound of ground bison. And bison is just, I like to use bison over ground beef. I like to use organic bison and organic meats on the whole. And bison just, to me, is a healthier, cleaner kind of meat than, not real crazy about the way they process meat in the commercial stores. So I try to stay away from that. But you know, you could use ground beef if you wanted to. Okay, here's our mixture. It's kind of a soupy. Just kind of mix it up. Got your herbs, your eggs, your binder, all of that in there. And we've got our meat. And I've already got it, well, it's ground up. Then I'm going to mix this together. We're going to make our meatballs. And then we're going to cook them. Turn that down just a little bit. And then we're going to add our sauce. I've already cooked my spaghetti. But while I'm mixing this up and while I'm cooking these, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mediterranean diet. One of the reasons I like it so much. If I move this, you can see me a little bit better. I've got 3 tablespoons of olive oil. The Mediterranean diet uses a lot of, but they're using more avocado, I've noticed, in the more modern cooks. And avocado just has a higher smoke point, as coconut oil does. And so, but for this purpose, I'm not going to have these on real high. They're kind of a medium. I went ahead and used the olive oil on these because it is a very healthy oil. But avocado oil would be good too. Either one. When we get these mixed up, we'll start making them into meatballs and frying them. The Mediterranean diet focuses on fruits and vegetables. Instead of having pies and cakes and cookies for dessert, the Mediterranean diet would focus on eating fruit like strawberries, maybe some watermelon, cantaloupe. Cantaloupe's coming in soon. I can eat a whole cantaloupe by myself. I love it. And I eat lots of it when it's fresh. It's actually raised in this part of the country, so you get them right out of the field. They're amazing. Same with watermelon. You get them out of the field, they're just so much better than what you get shipped in the stores. But they eat a lot of fruit for dessert, for snacks. Their base of the Mediterranean diet, it really is a plant-based diet. They don't have meat very often, and when they have more fish and shellfish. This is pretty mixed up. I'm going to go ahead and start making them. But beef and pork and even bison would be used very little and very seldom in the Mediterranean diet. They might eat beef once or twice a month, if even that often. Turn that up just a little bit. And pork the same way, and some of them may not eat it at all. They focus more on fish. But if you need to build protein in your body, for whatever reason, let's say I'm kind of low in protein sometimes, So sometimes I eat a little bit more of the bison than I do just fish all the time. But I do try to keep fish. And you know fish, you got to have healthy fish too. A lot of fish is toxic and has mercury in it. And you really need to do some research to buy your fish. I like the Argentine fish shrimp. It comes from Argentina because it comes from really clear, clean water. So the cleanest fish you're going to get are shellfish, shrimp that you'll get. But I try to do a lot of research on my fish and get some healthy stuff. Otherwise, you might not want to eat it as much because you don't want to get a lot of mercury in your diet either. I'm making those kind of golf ball size. Bison burgers are really lean, so you really do need that oil in there. And all these spices and herbs, Mediterranean diet uses a lot of spices and herbs. They don't eat a lot of dairy, and that's why it's considered one of the healthiest diets in the world. And it's because it is more plant-based, even though it's not vegetarian. And it's low in the dairy. So, you know, like the keto, they have that high protein, high fat, and a lot of dairy. I don't personally think that's the best diet to eat. Some people are fine with it, I guess. They like it, but some doctors recommend it, some don't. Just personally, I eat keto once in a while when I make something to watch the carbs. And on the whole, my diet is more lower carb focused and focused a lot on the Mediterranean diet. Now, the Mediterranean diet would use wine. I don't even drink wine, so I do use it in cooking. So I don't use that part of it. And they do recommend beans. I think every day. I don't eat beans every day because of the carbs, but I do eat beans, and I just eat smaller amounts when I eat them. And we'll make the rest of these up and squeeze them in the bowl with those cooked. They have pasta, but not tons of pasta. I don't eat pasta maybe once a month. Same way with rice. I don't eat rice but not once a month. And I try to keep it to about a half a cup after it's cooked. That's after it's cooked, not before. So not a whole lot of rice or pasta, but I will have dishes with rice, just like the spaghetti. It's one of my favorite spaghetti recipes. It's a really old recipe that I've been making for about 40 years. And in my 9-corn cookbook, I did a 9-corn version of the meatball and spaghetti. My sauce is in there, but the meatballs, I put some quinoa, and I used 9-corn breadcrumbs, which makes them really a little more gluten for people who have gluten sensitivity. You could use a gluten-free bread if you wanted to also. But it's just one of those recipes that I made when my kids were growing up, and I still make it. I just make it now with bison instead of ground beef. And we like it. Now I make enough that I'm going to have some to freeze. I'll have some meatballs to freeze. We will not eat a pound of this. And I have enough sauce made, and I've already been letting it simmer because I like it to kind of cook low and slow for several hours. And I will show you that in just a minute when we get our meatballs kind of going. But the sauce is really, really good, but I will freeze some of that too. I put it in quart bags, and I flatten them out, put them on a flat tray so they freeze flat. And when they get frozen, you can separate them out. I think we said that, but the Mediterranean diet is one of the healthiest diets in the world. Research has proven it for years and years and years. If you want to help fight, research shows it helps fight heart disease and even diabetes because it's not high carb, and you can cut the carbs down. You don't have to, again, I don't have that pasta very often because I really don't need it very often. So you can cut it down and keep it lower on the carb side, but do some research on the Mediterranean diet. It's just one of the healthiest diets you can eat. And I love to eat this way. Nothing's really restricted. You know, it's low in dairy, but you can have some dairy. When I do my strawberries, and we're having fresh strawberries tonight too, I'll put just a little bit of whipped cream on there. And I did use some artificial sweetener on them, so they're all ready to go. And again, keep that fruit for dessert. You don't have to have the whipped cream on there. You just eat the strawberries. Probably in true Mediterranean, they probably wouldn't have the whipped cream, but I'm going to have it on mine. I'll let those cook. I'm going to get my sauce and talk about it. Now this sauce has been cooking a few hours, a couple hours anyway. And how I made the sauce, you can make it with just tomatoes, like canned tomatoes. you would use tomatoes, and you can use a 6-ounce can of tomato paste. I don't. I kind of like it a little soupier, but that's up to you. And I chopped up an onion, a small onion, not a real big one, just a medium to small. Chopped it up real fine. I did 2 cloves of garlic, minced up very finely. I put in a couple of cups of water. And I had tomatoes that I had dehydrated, and I used those instead of the canned tomatoes, and I added water and fixed my sauce with enough tomato in it. And you just have to kind of adjust it. I use tomato sauce instead of tomato paste, actually, because I like it a little better, but you can use tomato paste. I put in about 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt, but again, you salt it to taste. Put in a teaspoon and then go from there. You can always add some. I put in 1 1/2 teaspoons of dried oregano. I love oregano in almost anything cooking-wise, especially like in spaghetti sauce, pizzas, meatballs, things like that. I put in about 3 tablespoons of that extra virgin olive oil. You want some good olive oil. And black pepper. You season it to taste. You can add more garlic. You can use garlic powder to make it more garlicky. I did put a little bit of garlic powder in there too. You can put more garlic in it, garlic bulbs. You just add salt and pepper to your taste. You gotta make things the way you and your family like them. And that's just the bottom on any cooking. I always say that. Adjust your seasonings at the end and get them the way you and your family like them. I'm going to cover these meatballs so they'll kind of cook a little bit better. But this sauce is just really good. I've already tasted it. I've seasoned it. I've got it the way I want it. Up here, maybe you see it better. I don't know. I don't want it on the heat necessarily. It's already cooked. And I don't want to spill it. But get where you can see it better. But this sauce is just really, really, really good. I do not put sugar in my tomato sauce. Some people do. A teaspoon or so. I don't. There's no reason for it in my opinion. If you use, I dehydrate tomatoes all the time when they're fresh, especially. I'll cut them up in pieces. You want your tomatoes cut up in little tiny chunks. And then, so there's a little piece in there. If you don't want the pieces in there, you can always run this, cool it down a little bit and run it through a blender. But I like some chunks in there myself. I also have a bay leaf in here. And just let it cook and adjust the seasoning as you go. Get it about the thickness and the taste you want. But your dehydrated fresh tomatoes, you'll add them, put them in water and rehydrate them. And then I did put the tomatoes in the water, in my blender to really, because they were bigger pieces of tomatoes. But they still have some chunks in there. It's not like, if you're using canned, canned diced, I wouldn't even bother to do that. But with these bigger pieces, I did do that. Makes a wonderful sauce. And like I said, your onion and your garlic, you can put a little thyme. I did put a little thyme in here, like 1/4 teaspoon. Then I put that oregano in. So it's just a tasty, tasty pasta. And I have a whole wheat pasta. You can use corn pasta. You can use regular pasta. You can use whatever kind you want. I kind of like the whole wheat, but it's up to you. I cooked it, and then I put some olive oil on it. When you cook your pasta, get that water salty enough that your pasta, when you take a piece of pasta and eat it, that it tastes seasoned, salt. If you get too much salt, it'll be too salty. I put some in, and then I'll cook it. And when I go to taste it, if it needs more, I'll add it then. And then when it comes out, I'll drain it, and then I'll put it in the bowl with olive oil. That sauce is just perfect for me. I love, and I make a sauce very similar to this and put it over shrimp, cooked shrimp, instead of pasta. And you can do the shrimp with the pasta instead of the meatballs. There's all kinds of ways to do it. If you want to keep it vegetarian, don't even have the meatballs or have a vegetarian meatball. You can also do that. So we'll let this cook a little bit, and then we'll see how it comes together. You know, one of the things about like I said, a Mediterranean diet versus keto. Keto is very popular nowadays. I know that, but I'm not real crazy of the high protein, high fat myself. I know it's a good way to keep your carbs down, but overall, I just don't think it's as healthy as we just need to go back to what the ancient people did. Mediterranean goes back to the Cretes and way back in the beginning of time. I mean, those people ate vegetables and things that they grew. They lived by the sea and they got fish out of the water. I mean, they caught fish fresh, which was non-toxic back then either. It was a good fish. But it's just a real back to basics way of eating. And the paleo diet does some of that too, but the paleo is still a little different. I know paleo is popular with some people. Keto is very popular with some people. Mediterranean is still and always has been very popular and I think this is probably the healthiest way to eat myself. And there's just, you don't have those restrictions. So when you're eating out or you go to somebody's house, you don't feel like, well, I can't eat anything, or I'm going to have to take something, or I can't eat, or something. So you don't have that restriction with the Mediterranean, because you are allowed some beans and you are allowed some pastas. But they eat a lot of squash, like summer squash is really good in all kinds of dishes. Lots of salads. I'm going to do some really, really good salads for cooking shows, because there's really creative, wonderful ways to make salads. You can have fruit. Like I said, I don't eat tons of some fruits. Some of them, like pineapples and oranges, are pretty sweet. I had an orange today. A lot of times I'll just eat half of an orange and save the other half because of the higher carbs. But I eat a lot of blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, and the berries. And I'll eat a little bit in the summer. Watermelon, I eat tons of cantaloupe. So you have to kind of pick and choose what you can do for your own self. But you can lose weight on a Mediterranean diet. I ate this way and I've lost 70 pounds, so I know you can lose weight on it, and I've kept it off a couple of years. I don't have a problem with weight anymore. It just, the way I eat, I don't have a problem. But, and this is how I eat. But, again, I keep those carbs down. Don't have pasta often, I just have a little bit. And I do focus more on the plant-based part. Don't eat a lot of beef and pork. I've never really cared that much for beef and pork. I'm okay with a little bit of bison along. But I do eat quite a bit of fish. I like fish, so that's kind of the way we do it around here. That's the way it rolls. They're almost done. Once around the certain parts of the pan, this cooker it doesn't cook as even as my stove does, so it's a little harder to get things completely done. I'm going to check on this. We'll see if this is done. I have more to cook, but I can cook those later. That looks really done to me. I think they're just about there. Let me taste, see if they're seasoned enough. I think they are. Yes, they're good. Fix my plate. About that much spaghetti. Not a whole lot, but more than enough. If you use a small plate, you won't get as much. Got my spaghetti, my meatballs, and some sauce over the top. That'll be good. And I'm going to put just a little bit of cheese. I keep my cheese, I buy it fresh and I grate it and I put it in the freezer. So I just put a little bit on there. I don't need a lot. You could have some, a small piece of French bread if you wanted to, but I don't want to. I've got enough carbs in the spaghetti. I think you just have to, eat in moderation, depend on your dietary needs. Some people can handle a lot more carbs than others. I can't handle a lot of them myself. Not real good at twirling spaghetti, but we're gonna eat it here. It's delicious, absolutely delicious. That slow cooked spaghetti with that oregano and thyme, a little salt and pepper and basil. I put some parsley in there. I put parsley in the meatballs. The bison really gives it a good taste, very lean. And the seasonings and the herbs that we put in there, the onion, the garlic, it just all comes together and makes that perfect bite. So I hope you make this dish and let me know how you like it. And we'll see you on the next show.